In our last update, we mentioned how Australia was seemingly navigating the narrow path, that nirvana scenario of falling inflation, no more rate hikes, full employment, continued economic growth, and with no fallout in house prices. And for the most part, that continues with the resilience of our economy against a range of pressures and a cooling global economy on display. More recently, we saw the federal government deliver its May budget, that fiscal lever used to either grow or cool an economy. The government is attempting to assist with cost of living relief while cooling inflation. It's attempting to support economic growth with increased net migration while simultaneously addressing house price affordability. But these are paradoxical issues serving a lot of different masters, and in the end, it arguably doesn't get anywhere at all. Of course, governments like to get re-elected, and with a federal election on the horizon, the government will argue this budget does enough. It has its headline with a surplus of $9.3 billion. Now that sounds contractionary, however, it's thanks to revenue windfalls rather than savings. Also, it has an outcome. Inflation is set to fall below 3% in 2024-25 and beyond. And it has deliverables. Around the country, lots of different groups get something. There is the usual consensus about the long-term challenges of defence investment, NDIS sustainability, health and our ageing population, and energy transition. And it does give a nod to inflation and housing affordability, but without doing anything really materially to move the needle. Noting that we're looking into a wall of deficits, it's easy to argue it does nowhere near enough to address inflation. But there's more. We have a low growth forecast, but across the economy we have minimal surplus capacity. So if we do stimulate growth, we'll almost immediately see an uplift in inflation. And for all of these reasons, and more, this needed to be a productivity budget. If we are to address this in any meaningful way, we will need continued net elevated migration, allay immediate capacity constraints, continued skill development to build a higher skilled economy, improve technology investment to improve manufacturing processes, workplace efficiencies and the like, tax reform to simplify tax, which really had its last big reform with the GST. It also needs infrastructure spending to meet the challenges of increased population, and labour market reform, ensuring that workplace laws match modern employee requirements. To the extent that we can see it, there are only one of these elements being addressed, being skill development. We can address these matters now when they're background issues, or wait until they're urgent, but they're not going away. With headwinds of structural inefficiency, an ageing population reducing the pool of taxpayers, the growth of the services sector, which is more labour intensive and less productive, and the trend towards onshoring is a shift away from the competitive advantage policies we've pursued over the last generation, and are not a driver of productivity. So the budget that tries to give something to everyone does deliver everyone one thing: a higher neutral interest rate setting and a more inflationary-prone environment going forward. Investors will rightfully ask, what does this mean for Australian real estate private credit investment strategies? In a nutshell, nothing. And that's because we carefully construct our investment portfolios to perform through all market, all economic cycles. Our 12-month term account, which is now into its 22nd year, has therefore lived through 22 separate budgets from both Labor and Liberal governments. It has remained a beacon of consistency, delivering impeccable performance with no investor ever lost a cent of capital, flawless liquidity, and our declared distribution rate matching our advertised rate throughout. And that's something that our almost 100,000 investors can budget for. Thank you for watching.